Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The Inevitable. This
Yeah.
is the MotorTrend podcast where we talk about the future of transportation, the future of the car, the future of mobility, where we go and how we're going to get there. I'm at home today. I'm Johnny Lieberman, and I'm joined as always by
Edlo, and I'm also at home. It's holidays, so people are traveling. This one's hard to do, but boy, we got a special one for you today.
That's right.
Johnny and I recorded this one at the LA Auto Show, where the headline debut of that show was Lucid Motors Gravity SUV, and we're going to talk to this guy right here. He's going to be pointing. Peter Rawlinson, the CEO, CTO of Lucid Motors, and Johnny's good friend, as well as Derek Jenkins, who is the SVP head of design and branding and whatever, all that stuff, all the fun stuff, sexy stuff for Lucid Motors. We're going to talk to them all about this vehicle. Isn't that right, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, so 2 points. One is this was sort of the only debut at the LA Auto Show that, like, I mean, there might have been one or two others, but
Or Subaru Forester.
Yeah, but it had been driven, right? Like, or something. I don't know. Kind of looks like the old Forester. This is different. This is new. This is exciting. It's a 3-row SUV. It makes all the horsepower in the world. It goes over 400 miles. It can tow. It can go off-road. It's slick. It's got a lot of space. But
it introduces a new term to EVs and cars called Frunking.
Oh, yeah, Frunkin. Yeah.
Frunking.
Lean over.
The trunk. Yes.
Ed, lean over.
I'm there.
Yeah. Boom. Look at that. There's a seat in the frunk now that Peter designed himself.
Yes.
And I think, though, what people need to know about Peter, because we've had Derek on before as a guest, but Peter is really kind of when they write the book on the electric car revolution. I mean, he'll have his own chapter. He was hired by this guy named Elon Musk to be the project manager for
chief engineer
for the Model S and the Model X, which I didn't even know, which are, two big
small insignificant cars in the history of electric vehicles, and more importantly, software defined vehicles.
So this dude designed the Model S, which we named our car of the year very famously. He also designed the Lucid Air, which we also named our car of the year, I think 11 years later. Or 10 years later, whatever it was. But yeah, so this dude knows how to design good electric vehicles. And we spent a lot of time talking with him. And then, Derek, again, we've had him on before, but he gives us some insight into what's different about the Gravity, especially different. We never saw like a prototype, but we saw some prototype images.
Right.
And it changed a lot since then, and he'll tell us why.
Yeah. And the thing is, right, this is the big sophomore album for Lucid. You want to make sure, and referencing the guitars in Johnny's wall, you want to avoid the sophomore slump, obviously. So there's some interesting questions there. And then the big thing is, you got one vehicle. When you got two, maybe you have a small family of vehicles now. And maybe from Derek's perspective, we can talk about what Lucid's design actually looks like. Like, what is their signature style? Because it's hard to say. You got one car, like, okay, that's what it looks like. But now you got, the arguably the most important vehicle that they will build, because it's an SUV and it's got space.
So I think that's the best part of this interview, actually, because when they launched the Air, everybody kind of said, hey, sedans are dying out, no one's really buying them anymore, like why aren't you doing an SUV? That question is answered. I never knew this, but Peter actually talks about that, why they did the sedan first, and it's not what you think. It's not what I thought, at least. And yeah, like, this is not their sink or swim moment for Lucid, because as he talks about, they have some funding.
Right.
Yeah. But this is a really important, like, Mercedes just came out and said, hey, look, like, EVs are now 15% of all the vehicles we sell in the US. 0.9% of those are the electric sedans. 0.all% of those are the electric SUVs. Americans want, love SUVs, and now Lucid has one. And from the looks of things, it's pretty good.
Yep. But enough teasing about it. Let's get to the experts. Let's talk to them. And a quick programming note. This one is going to be the last one until the New Year's. We're going on a little bit of a holiday. It's been a lot of work, a lot of stuff going on. but we got some good ones for you coming very, very soon. We're going to actually not stop recording. We're just going to stop publishing. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next year. And tell you what, go back and listen to some of our best ones. I think Mujib iJazz from Our Next Energy was one of the favorites. Definitely Jim Farley and Doug Field. Listen to those each 3 times because you'll learn something new every time. I don't know. And then do you have a favorite that we did, Johnny? Misha, right? I mean, your boys.
I mean, it was funny, but Sean, the producer, and I were talking about it. The Misha Mansour Tosin Abasi, which literally, not a ton of car stuff, but there was some. But that one was just a lot of fun. And Misha's signature guitar there is behind my head. That's a prototype of I think between Gen 6 and 7 of his guitars. I thought that, looking back, the Doug Field one is maybe where I learned a lot. And also Carl Dumm's with the e-fuels, the Porsche synthetic fuel. I went from not understanding. I don't want to say a non-believer. I believed it was a technology, but I didn't understand why. And since then, I've actually talked to a lot more people about not just e-fuel, but like hydrogen for passenger cars. And I think last year, Germany via green technology produced, so if I get this right, 5.8 terawatts of electricity that they couldn't use. So that's like a terawatt's like 1,000 gigawatts. In other words, they didn't have, homes and businesses didn't need it at that moment that it was being produced, or the moments over the course of the year it was being produced. There was no batteries to store it. It just was made and went back to wherever it went. So like with the e-fuels, could this be liquefied into hydrogen? And if it's liquefied, what do we do with it? So it's fascinating. So I think that one I really learned quite a bit. So my favorite. And
Kia's future strategy guy was also a bit of an education there. So if you miss us over the holidays, go back and re-listen to some of the episodes, and we will see you next year
in 2024.
Fantastic. All right. So
jump into it.
Yes.
So Gravity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
You literally just rolled it out an hour and a half ago or so, 2 hours ago. Probably a little premature to say what the response has been, but I saw you checking your phone just now. What have you heard?
Overall, it's pretty positive.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled with the response.
Okay.
So Derek and I were talking before we started recording a little bit, and I saw a couple of years ago there was a rendering, and it looked more like a Mercedes GLE. It was more of a wide-shouldered, kind of off-roady looking thing, and it's different now. It's much more, it looks like a sibling to the Air, much more aero, sleek. Can you tell us how it changed and why?
Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
I mean, I think there are certainly elements that we brought in from the early studies that we did. But I think, as we got deeper into kind of what our real objectives were for the product in terms of space, utility, on-road dynamics, still off-road dynamics, of course, aerodynamics and hitting our range and performance marks, things evolve, and that's kind of the transition that it's made. But we feel genuinely that's where the true sweet spot of the market lives in terms of attributes and desirability.
Okay. Can you just refresh our memory, or maybe break some news here? You didn't disclose a ton about range, the specifics. I think you dropped horsepower.
No, we dropped range.
It's going
to have in excess of 440 miles.
In excess of 440 miles at the with the largest battery in the most efficient configuration.
They're all pretty efficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that would be like in the Air, I believe the Grand Touring is the range king, and that would be the Grand Touring Gravity would be.
Well, it's interesting. The range king is the Grand Touring, has 516 miles. We get 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour, but actually the most efficient now is the rear-wheel drive Pure, which gets 4.74 miles per kilowatt hour. So we get 410 miles. So you get this paradox that the car with the slightly less range is actually more efficient. And those figures really belie the truth, because the EPA rating
is now more stringently tested.
Right.
So it's not an apples per apples. We think if we put pure rear-wheel drive on the old testing, it would get more like 4.9. We don't know definitively. I don't want to claim that. But it sort of underlines this vision we had that maybe in a year or two we could get a version of Lucid Air to 5 miles per kilowatt hour. That was the vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And then so talk about that, because I mean I'm vaguely aware of that because I have an electric truck that gets like under 2, but it's like that's a big number to get to 5 kilowatt.
5 miles.
5 miles.
Per kilowatt
5 miles per kilowatt hour is a big number. So what, like, and Derek, just to bring it back to what we started with, like, you know, the gravity change. Like, so what drives such a big number? What's
Well, it's a combination of things. Certainly on the design side, a lot of it lies with aerodynamics and trying to manage things like the spectrum of ride height capability, the design of the underbody. Certainly, all of that plays a role. The depth of the front ramp angle, the depth of the rear ramp angle, it all plays a role. So you really have to optimize that stuff to get to a number that's really going to play in any level of contribution to the rest of the suite of technologies that we have as a company to get to those efficiency numbers. Yeah.
Right, but hardware-wise, like the motors, they're the same as the Air?
So they're a derivative based upon Air. We've got some new internal technology which we're bringing in, which I can't go into at this stage, but is quite revolutionary, and we're going to get some more efficiency out of what we've got because of that.
And that that's like the motors,
right in
inverters.
We're right in the core of the motor. We're making some advantages, and also we've got heat pump coming in now from Sapphire. Sapphire is our first cut of heat pump, and then we're going to bring that in across the range.
And heat pump just means that you can help heat the cabin with battery.
You can extract the heat out of the battery. It's like the system in your home. You're getting extracting out of your garden from the ground. But some of the points that Derek raised on aero, some subtle differences from the cars that you've seen tested, the prototype. We've got a lower roofline, haven't we?
That's right.
And we've got that extended rear spoiler, and we've gone from the squared off wheel arches to the round wheel arches, and they made a few point cancer drag difference, but they also gave us more of the Sapphire DNA. I much preferred them when I saw them.
Absolutely.
So we tooled for the alpha prototypes with a squircle arches, and
I think that was the rendering that was released 2 years ago. When
literally behind your head.
You're right.
I think that was a different exterior design quite extensively, but it had the squircle wheel arches.
We actually had several studies going on simultaneously.
I'm just saying the chose one the public saw.
Yeah. But it to Peter's point, it's like you start to really go through. It's like where do we want the attributes to lie for this thing? And as you go through and you realize, like, okay, awesome interior space, and we're going to have a real third row because that does matter to people in this category. We're going to have real usable cargo space, not just usable, but like stellar, and hit these aero targets.
And how do you define a real third row? You mean like adult friendly?
I'm talking about like the majority of adults can sit back there comfortably.
Okay. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Where, as you know, so often the third row is like a.
You could do it for 15 minutes if you need to.
You as an adult, you could take a decent trip and sit comfortably back there.
So Zach Edson, my colleague, is 6. Zach Edson, my colleague, is 6'6". Yeah. He can sit in the third row.
Jeez.
And I'm about 6 foot, and I'm comfortable in the third row.
Yeah.
And if you look at competitive vehicles, I just can't get in there. Now, one of the things we did to accommodate this was we made a very similar battery pack design to Air, but it's not exactly the same. So we got all the tooling economies of scale. We've got the same modules, the same voltage, 924 volts, still 22 modules. But on Air, we stacked double height underneath the rear seat, right under your butt, to get those two modules there. And we moved those two modules forward underneath the front row seats in gravity, because you sit higher and that's kind of wasted space. And we pushed it just forward of where you sit so the second row feet can get in, and that meant we could have a fully flat floor getting in behind the second row, so you can get second row sliders and low foot position for the third row. So this is what I describe about this is like a a myopia in the industry that it's got to be common platform, common. And I believe in similar shades of grey. You get 95% of the economy of scale. You get all the technology transfer. We've got a different top cover for a battery pack, and 2 of those modules move, but it transforms the product.
That's right.
Just for that slight extra hassle.
Well, I also
hang on. Let me ask. But in that third row, if it's flat all the way back,
yes,
is the third row passenger sitting kind of butt on the floor, knees high, or is it a more natural seating position?
It's more natural,
It's
and you
very
must
natural.
you must try it.
Okay.
We must get you in the back there.
Yeah.
It's no problem.
No, so your feet are then absolutely on the flat floor. So your feet are at the same height. At all 3 rows, your feet are the same height.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we're able to put the actual H point at a good height.
Yes,
right.
Because we're not folding the third row seat onto itself.
Oh.
We're folding it into the floor in the rear.
Yeah.
and the third row sits over the motor, you see, so you're on that natural height. So then it was about aero with a sweep of the roof versus headroom in third row.
That's right.
And that was a compromise. How much range versus third row headroom?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So battery, and then it's
So the
third row.
battery stops, then you've got the hump over the motor.
Okay.
So the third row sits with his butt on the motor, with feet at the bottom of the back of the battery.
Got
so
it.
you've got first row, second row, third row, all sitting feet on the battery. And then the third row sits on top, the hump where the motor is.
Right.
And so then what we had to compromise with the sweep of the roof, we knew the more sweepy we made it, we were getting better counts of drag.
Yeah.
And that each one you can say that's going to give us an extra 1.5 miles or whatever per degree.
Right.
And then it's like, well...
So you're trading headroom for range.
And there is no correct answer. This is not an equation that you can solve with an absolute solution.
But it goes
it's
back
what
to
do we
like
think?
brand values.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like all of these attributes, and this is what I love about this design at Lucid, because if you can embrace the attributes that you're trying to reach, it'll drive you to certain aesthetic solutions. And if you can do that artistically and honor the goals you're trying to meet on the customer's behalf, then you can embrace that and create an aesthetic. Like, for example, we do accept the car is going to have a visually long tail spoiler. And that's just going to be a defining characteristic of the car. And it'll be like, let's make the most out of that,
And we
know?
we in a moment of nervousness, we actually cranked that back a bit.
Yeah, and we've
gone a bit too far.
tested both
It was pretty
extremes,
extreme.
you know?
Yeah.
But what I like is, you have this long-standing truism, let's say, about EVs. That like, well, hey, you can do anything you want because you're not worried about exhaust pipes. And but like, no one really, they just kind of make a skateboard. But I like that you like shifting the batteries around, which is what people say you could do, but no one ever does it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
And I'm sure we'll share with you. You can look at in the workshop. You can see, that's an air pack and that's a gravity pack, and there's a slightly different shape to the top. But 95% of it's the same. So you've got that inherent value of the investment, but you get that product differentiation for just a little bit of cost. And I think a great example of what we did and the way we worked, Derek, is I really think that a key driver of gravity was the kinematics of the seats.
Definitely.
How the seats fold to get this perfectly flat floor. Now, the green car out there has got the seats down, and people think, that must be the one with just the 2 rows.
Yeah.
No, the third row, because the third row seat goes back into the well behind in the trunk.
Right.
And we looked at second row seats going like that, and that didn't work. In the end, the breakthrough was go slide them down and wallop.
Yeah.
And this gives this exceptional access from the rear door, which opens at 90 degrees. So it's been a triumph of seat packaging to achieve this, which has driven the exterior design, because so often a car company would have, Derek does this stuff in the studio, there's the clay model, engineering, we can't fit the seats, but that's the design.
Yeah.
But what we did was we looked at how, to the last millimetre, how big was that trunk well in order to get the rear seat to fold into it. And then we had the issue with the rear headrests and the rear impact. So we had the rear headrest coming down and then get it in. And that really determined the rear overhang and the exterior design, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's all interconnected. On one hand, we're trying to taper the roof down, but we've got this really incredibly low floor, and we want to make sure we use that floor for utility, so let's make sure we can fold the seat all the way down. you're right in that we left enough cargo space in that lower rear floor, but it's also because, again, Lucid's compact drivetrain in the rear is what leaves half of that space available so the seat can then fold behind itself. Everybody else just does the flap it over on top of itself. That eats up 200 millimeters of vertical height. Now you can't get the mountain bike in the back.
Well, I think what's important, and just for our listeners here, they're like, why are these guys nerding out about the seats and how they're folding? And it's really important because what you guys are talking about, this is your sophomore album. This is your follow-up to the first one.
Yes.
This one, if you believe in you mentioned it, the platform architecture model of car manufacturing, this might spawn every other variant of this size, of this number of passengers. And this is the kind of stuff that auto manufacturers really have to sweat at the outset, because a lot of what you're talking about, like the folding seats, brings to mind like the Chrysler minivan, Stow and Go, or the Honda Odyssey that'll tumble the seat backwards. These become legacy features that become built upon if you get the packaging correct at the very first moment.
Not only that, I mean, not to say too many nice things about our guests, but like I've always been told by engineers, like that's the hardest thing to design is a minivan. Like sports cars are easy, right? They go real fast and they compromise everything. But a minivan, you got to have 7 people, and it's got to drive the same if there's 1 passenger or 7, and it's got to be safe, and it's got to be functional, and you got to get the seats in and out, and it's really just a hard thing. It's not sexy. Sports cars are sexy.
I think it's sexy, but I do want to talk about.
Man.
I know I'm odd. We got
to talk about the interior.
Yeah, so I want, but one thing I want, because you mentioned DNA, and I just brought up how this is your sophomore album.
Yes.
So what then becomes, now that we have a second full production model from Lucid, what do you tell people are these signature design elements going forward for
Sure.
Lucid?
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, we have a lot of the packaging attributes in Air. That's what drives the long, sleek cabin, short hood and bonnet. In this liquid surfacing, the graphic elements front and rear, and that's overall sense of like elegance, dynamicism, sleekness. All of that has made its way into Gravity. And I think the evolution is really like, how do we continue to push the package, push the more extreme cabin profile, in this case keeping a really SUV character through the nose, still powerful shoulders, very wheel oriented. All of those things have lived on. I just think throughout the vehicle we're always looking for opportunities to simplify, purify. We are kind of purists in that regard.
Sure.
In design, I look at it the same way. We want to be pure. That's how we're going to be memorable. Let others do trendy stuff and things like that. Let's lead our way in a pure manner. And that's definitely lived on in Air, Gravity, both exterior and interior.
Could we talk before you go? I noticed some interior differences. I assumed wrongly that it would just be like just put the Air interior in an SUV, but like steering wheel's different, screens are different, orientation's different. Like why and what changed?
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm most proud of with Gravity from a design standpoint. And as you guys know really, really well, interior architecture, specifically screen locations, is like one of the most dynamically evolving things about the automobile. I mean, it's remarkable what's changed. Even in 5 years, you can look at cars from 5 years ago and be like, that seems like a million years ago.
The tachometer's gone.
Yeah, and it's changing so fast. And we feel like we were on the cutting edge with Air, in the layout and the screen architecture and what we did there. And then we identified opportunities to improve upon that in a crossover kind of architecture, crossover SUV architecture. And that's what we did. So we moved and we knew we were going to go OLED with our displays, and we didn't want to cover up
organic LED.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. We didn't want to cover up the beautiful displays and obscure it with the steering wheel. So it led us to some 25 different steering wheel prototypes.
So my hands nervous because I tested every one, and someone thought it was a good idea to billet machine them out of aluminum. And I went on my test drive every weekend, driving from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, because it was not great because it didn't have an airbag, and so these are prototype Airs. So I'm driving these prototype Airs late at night through Central California with this freezing cold billet machine, and I say, I don't like this one, I don't like this one.
And it's like, your hands are cold.
Like, yeah.
That's
so So and then gradually, 25 versions out later, and we got there.
But I think we've nailed it, and I do think that I know this is a challenge for every interior design department on the planet. And so I feel like we've cracked this.
And so I think the most noticeable change people are going to see is instead of having the portrait view for the, what do you call it, secondary screen, it's now kind of, landscape.
That's right. Yeah. So that was a big opportunity because we were able to move the upper display up in just below your side angle. Then the lower display could go landscape and move up even higher. So the proximity to your right hand is it's like 50 millimeters.
And you're
right
not looking
there.
down as much.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and that's the whole point of all of this at the end of the day is to get more screen real estate and do it while also optimizing the latency between viewing the road and viewing the screen, getting that as quick as possible, and not just the top screen, but the lower screen as well. So there's a big safety element here and a distraction element that we feel strongly about.
Because, I've spent a lot of time driving Airs, and I tend to find the lower screen. I use that when I'm stopped. Yeah. All right, I'm going to change modes. I'm looking down. I'm pointing. I notice this one just seems much more
significantly higher.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
Okay,
so cool.
So, tell me about the light show, that both inside and out, and maybe outside in. Because one thing I will say about Air is that one of its best angles, I think, is as it goes away, it's got a really strong visual. Just the way the lights come on. I've only seen you got a whole loop playing here of some great footage behind Johnny's head, and I watched some of the B-roll, but I haven't yet seen the nighttime. Is there anything dazzling we should
actually
be paying attention
that is
to?
pretty strongly tied to Lucid Air on the outside. So we have our primary light blade in the front, which we've optimized our micro lens array for headlights, so that's all really tightly packaged and very slim. And then we've got a stronger vertical LED feature. Around the rear, though, we've gotten even more minimalist with our taillight signature, and that's that like swoop that comes through the back, and it's lensless now, so it's a very three-dimensional part. But it's really the interior where we've taken a big step with obviously with the screens, but also we have animated ambient lighting throughout, and that's
what does animated mean?
So that means that we have a whole series of interior entertainment and wellness features, and so we can do what's called lucid spaces, where we'll take you to a place on the beach. We'll play that imagery,
right.
And then everything works or carpool karaoke, where you have that kind of animated lighting working in concert with whatever you have playing on screen.
Got it.
So it's a really immersive type of experience, and the ambient lighting enables it.
I'd just like to add one feature as well, the lighting. We moved the main beams lower and out of the micro lens array. And one of the drivers for that was to really maximize the aperture of the front, because we wanted the headlamps. You don't want the headlamps going up and down in the front, because there's no guarantee where they're going to end up. So you want them solidly located on the main body structure.
That's right.
So by having this, the main beams inboard of the micro lens array would mean that our aperture for the front would be compromised. So we moved the main beams lower and in individual positions. It has a different light signature in the night. And of course, the byproduct of that is you can go frunking as well. But it wasn't that we could go frunking that drove it. It was just but it's
just
joined up
optimizing
thinking.
the front.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great.
New terminology.
I had to bring in that.
No.
You are not going to get away with it.
I wanted to follow up on them. So glad you brought it up. So you move the light. There's a
limit.
main beam.
The main beam.
There's a limit to how low you can put those, right?
Yeah.
So okay,
it's legal.
You did it. You did it to maximize the aperture of the frunk, and then you brought in the term frunking.
Yeah.
So this is a cushion added to the back as a backrest, and then a flip out for your thoughts.
Yes.
Whose idea was this?
Totally.
And
with two cup holders.
But
let's not forget.
It's an optional accessory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's for tailgating.
So the idea is
the
idea is if you pull up to a beauty spot, you drive nose in and looking at the beauty spot, right? And then the sun comes out and you think, oh, it's lovely. I think I'll go out and have a cup of coffee. But right now you have to go around the back, and you're not going to reverse the car around just for that.
Totally.
But having that there, you can say, oh, I'll just stop for a bit longer.
But you could also sit in the back.
You could do that.
Yeah.
So
But you could
this
reverse in,
this literally happened a week ago. I'm driving south on PCH past Point Magoo, and it was one of those. We have crazy sunsets this time of year, and everybody's pulled off.
Yeah.
And they're kind of nosed towards the sunset. I'm driving south away from the sunset, and they're all standing and sitting on their hood,
Right.
looking out. I mean, dozens of people.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
and I'm like.
They're not going to turn the car around.
It's
Especially.
just like perfect, you know.
So is that the was that the
That was
inspiration?
inspiration.
And had you been frunking in an Air and just decided, hey, let's
Air
actually
is
it was
not
just
possible.
something which we dreamed up.
Yeah,
And
because
the idea is that it's an accessory, so you can buy different ones. You can have Bear logos. You can have different. And what we're going to do is have the bit that we haven't seen that yet because we're the bit of the seat that flaps down to protect your shins.
yeah.
We're going to fold that up and clip it in so it becomes the front cargo net. So if you want to go shopping, you don't have to switch the thing out.
Oh, that's smart. I know you're English, but what you got to do is get American football teams.
Oh yes,
and for tailgating,
Yes.
so you
Yes.
can get your
The
Packers, or
whole
Rams
deal.
or whatever.
The Bears.
The Bears.
Well, you don't want to ever do anything with the Bears. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're, you
Come
could do
on.
that,
Or it could be the Golden Bears.
Yeah, there you
Cal,
go.
you
Yeah.
go to Cal.
Bruins.
No, no,
Yeah,
yeah.
Bruins.
I'm a USC guy.
Got you.
Oh, that's genius.
Yeah. Oh, it is cool. I like Frunking's a
And you got
clever
to know,
term.
It sounds kinda
as
dirty,
journalists,
too.
I
Yeah.
do need to direct you correctly. That's without the letter G. Frunkin.
Yeah, Frunkin. Yeah. Oh no, yeah.
Very
yeah,
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
Frunkin fresh.
Yes, it's gonna go great on live feed. So.
Any other cool
Yeah.
cool little hidden gems here you want to talk
You know,
about? Or fun stuff?
I love our glass center console.
Yeah,
you know, we went through got all this harmony of these amazing displays, and to carry that glass element down through the center console and just make trim detail out of it. The honesty of the material, I really, really like. Super excited. Center console, then your charging platform slides forward. That whole thing becomes one giant
I got to sit and play with it.
You got to play with it. It's
So-
really cool.
Let me ask you this. So for Air, you had 5 California-inspired themes.
Yes.
You know, Malibu, Mojave, Redwood. Are there new themes for Gravity?
There are. There's Yosemite, Ojai, Tahoe.
Ojai.
Yeah, Ojai. We pulled Ojai in. That was a big discussion.
When I was growing up, Ojai was like a meth lab.
No, I know. But now it's this like wellness sanctuary,
Right.
destination.
It's just funny. Like,
and
Ojai.
it's like, we got to do Ojai. This is like, there's nothing more Californian right now than Ojai.
Because you grew up there too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Remember,
sure.
Ojai was Wheeler's Gorge. You go off-roading?
Completely.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
but that has changed.
Okay.
Big
Yeah,
time.
no, totally.
So Yosemite and Ojai are the two big ones.
Okay.
Tahoe and Mojave are the carryovers. So we have
Okay.
Tahoe's the
Oh,
saddle
cool.
leather,
Yeah.
like on the silver car. Mojave's our black interior. Yosemite is cool because that's our light, more. I wouldn't call it white. It's like a ceramic gray, and that is a fully non-leather interior. So that's if you prefer that.
Yeah.
And our Mojave's non-leather. It's our Ojai and our Tahoe that are the full Napa leather interiors. Yeah. So.
Very cool.
When are we doing the East LA version?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Silver Lake.
Just wait.
The
just
Compton
give
Right.
it
edition.
20 years because it'll probably. I was just at a party in Park Slope in
I
Brooklyn.
could do it now. Nothing wrong with that.
So tell me about the surfboards because I was checking those out.
Yeah. So I mean, we're working out all the cargo and all that discussion about the fold flat, and it's like I kept going like, what's the max surfboard we can go get straight in? So we're at about 7'4". We can actually
Perfect.
max
Really?
out without doing anything funky with the front seat.
Okay.
Is that giant? That's not. Is that big for putting a
No,
surfboard?
that's
in the
I mean,
car? Okay.
it's 8 foot. You start get. You need to aim for 8 feet because right now,
Well,
everybody,
okay,
the,
but let me
foam,
stop
the
you
foam
there.
surfboard.
So diagonal, I can get 8.5.
How perfect!
So that's the whole point.
Okay.
Now 8.5 feet. There are lots of trucks coming on the market, not even near that. I mean,
Can we get
you know.
diagonal second and third row people with the safeguard between them? We've tried.
right.
Yeah.
Not to mention spending the night. I mean, I got over 7 feet of length. Sleeping in the back of Gravity would be a breeze.
Right.
You know, and again, there's a lot of other vehicles coming to market that can't even touch that are much larger
That's
than this
clutch.
vehicle.
That is key.
Right?
I have a old Land Cruiser, and it's one of the last that had the fold flat 2-row. and it can just barely fit a 6-footer
Right.
flat. So
Yeah.
the fact that you get 7 feet in,
We got 7 feet all day.
gravity
7.6,
is
yeah.
only a
Minute
little-
Bowl could.
Gravity's only a little bit longer than Lucid Air.
Yeah.
It's tiny a bit longer. I mean, that's how compact it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is crazy because you're going from a sedan to a large interior space three-row SUV. So that's shows the flexibility of the platform. But also, I mean, that's what to me always attracted me to Lucid was just like how much room there was inside compared to how small it was on the outside. It is like the magic tent, in the Arabian desert or whatever.
we're getting the high sign that
Okay.
Derek needs to jump to his other interview.
Okay,
He's a returning guest, though. So okay,
Yeah,
we've talked
we
to him
know
a lot.
about him.
We're going to focus on
Art Center,
Peter.
all that stuff.
But thank you.
Awesome, gentlemen.
Good
Always
to
a
chat with you.
pleasure.
We're going to focus now.
Oh, really?
on Peter.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Great,
You're
great.
good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So
Thank you. Okay.
a second vehicle. Did
Yes,
you
yes.
ever think you'd be here?
There were times we never thought we'd get the first one out.
Right.
I tell you, no one has any idea what we've been through as a company. The times we nearly went bankrupt, I was holding the company together.
You joined when it wasn't even called Lucid.
It was Ativa.
Ativa,
Yeah.
right. And you guys were making batteries for...
Which weren't very good. I found out after I joined.
All right, well, we should do a little history.
So I joined a company which was a mom and pop shop with about 19 people.
And what year was this?
Well, I was first approached in 13.
Okay, so you finished with Tesla.
Yeah, and I was in England and I was taking care of my mum. I lost my mum in 14, so it was in 15 I could come out properly, and I realised that things weren't all they seemed. And so we had to try and turn the thing around.
But when you came out, right, was the thinking to do a car, or were you just going to run a battery company?
So, no, I was approached by the company to do a car.
Okay.
Because up till then, they've been doing battery packs for buses in the Far East. And as I discovered, they weren't very good. So I was approached to do a car, and I said, look, I came off the back of doing Model S and Model X at Tesla. And I said, well, I've done a pretty good electric car. There are two conditions. I'm interested in coming. And they said, would you become the CTO? Okay. But if I do come, I want to take the car to the next level. I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Now, seriously, I really mean this. We've got to take the electric car to another level in terms of technology, everything.
And why did you want to do that?
Because it's very important, I think, for the environment. I think the EVs need to be advanced. Because if they're more advanced, then we can drive the costs down. And it's a two-step process. People don't get it. You have to start with a high-end product because the business is just untenable if you don't, because there's no margin. And that has to fund the technology which will drive the cost down. And I wanted to particularly target battery size. And no one was doing that. No one was even thinking about this. So I wanted to get ultra-high technology, drive down. There were 19 people in the company. It was a mom and pop shop.
Right.
So it was like, I said, I'll come, but we've got to make a more advanced car than anyone in the world has ever done. And there's something else. You're going to have to change the name of the company. And they said, why? I said, well, it's Ativa. It sounds pharmaceutical or some probiotic yogurt or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a car.
Or
And it's like,
a
I
TV
don't know about
brand
that.
or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
The new Sony Aptiva.
So it was. So anyway, and then I found that the funding wasn't there, so I had to get the funding. So I was like, well, will you come and join us? We've got the funding. Can you be CTO? Yeah, all right. Well, you haven't got the funding, have you? So I kind of got them 200 million, and then the race was on to do the car. Now, as part of that, the current investors said, okay, we'll invest, but it's got to be a sedan. So this is another sort of myth buster. I never said, right, we will do a sedan as a first product.
Okay, can I just tell you, people think that's canon. Like they think that you said, I did the Model S, I have to do a sedan.
There's so much falsehoods out here. It's just crazy. So in fact, I was told, we will give you this money, but you have to deliver a sedan.
Okay, and why did you ever ask why, or you just said?
This is for a book, I think, because we'll go down rabbit hole.
Right.
So it was predetermined for me that we'd do a sedan.
Right.
Now,
If you had your way, you would have rather.
well, I mean, to be fair, I knew that we could do this thing called the space concept, which had never been done before. We never did that with Model S. And I'm good at 3D thinking and 3D puzzles. So I could imagine that we could do the space concept with the cell deletes.
So the space, right? So
and the whole package,
you pull
revolution.
2 cells, and then you get a big deep
Totally,
well.
and that was what the car was designed around.
Right.
Okay, so that's another story.
Yeah.
So I knew we could do the space concept because I could imagine it in my head, and that's what I wanted to do. That made more. I thought it would make more difference to a sedan than an SUV. Actually, we're finding out the ramifications with SUV are just as profound with gravity, but I didn't foresee that. And I knew that efficiency was going to be the thing that no one was chasing, and I wanted to chase that down. Why? Not because I'm kind of a nerdy engineer, but I wanted to reduce battery pack size because I wanted to use less energy, less minerals, less everything. And I knew that's the big cost item in a car, and I had to drive that down in order to do a cheap electric car in the future. That's why I wanted to do Lucid Air. People don't know this, in order to push the cost down so we can get more people affording electric cars.
It's interesting because I remember the first time I met you was, I don't know when it was, a couple of years ago now, but we were at Laguna Seca. It was a real rough mule of the Sapphire.
That was summer 2020. That when I first met you.
I think it was before the pandemic, though. I think it was.
Oh, maybe it was 19 then.
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
But I remember, and I'm sitting there, and we're talking like 1,000 horsepower, and the range hadn't come out yet. But you were like, it's going to be way over whatever your concept.
And don't
is.
believe me.
And
no, I didn't believe Johnny when he said it. I was like,
but then I remember you said stop talking about horsepower. It's efficiency. You got to. I want you to tell this. And I go, that's boring. Let's talk about.
Well, hang on. When you said nobody is chasing efficiency, I mean, what does that mean? Because we just all these other guys are talking about the range, and they're doing EVs. And in what aspect are they not chasing?
They're chasing range, and they're achieving range with relatively low tech solutions by sheer number of batteries, and so. That's dumb range. You can achieve range 2 ways. You can just stuff a load more batteries in, and that's what everyone thought we'd done to get the 520 miles for dream range, but we hadn't. We'd just got 6,600 cells, which is relatively modest. We'd achieved the range through ultra high voltage, a completely redesigned electric motor from the ground up, and when in about 2015 I started building my motor team. And convincing the most brilliant scientists in the world to come and join me, we were still a TEVA. It's like it was a hard sell. We're going to redesign the electric motors from the ground up, and you're going to have a supercomputer, and I want the motor team and the transmission team to work as one single group. You're all going to sit together, and it's going to be one single rotary inertial system, motor and transmission. We're not going to have a transmission that bolts onto a motor. We're going to have a single unit integrated. And let's supercompute. I want to see electrons finding their way around molecules. I want to see at that level. And let's redesign this from the ground up and turn this into a science research project. And that's what we did. And Dr. Imad Dalala joined me, and he led that. Brilliant scientist, got an outstanding PhD in electromagnetics, and really led that operation, and a brilliant transmission engineer in Balash Palthai, who's done an outstanding job with the integral active core differential and the epicyclic sets, which to get single step epicyclic at 7.06 to 1 is quite a feat. And we're actually going to go to 9. We're already at 9 for pure rear-wheel drive, single-step epicyclic. It's unheard of because you get a gear undercut geometry issue with the sun if you're not careful.
Okay, so let's bring this back down to earth.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that the Lucid Air Pure was getting, you could get it up to 5.7.
So we can get 4.74 miles per kilowatt hour now.
Yes,
but that's with the new EPA cycle, which is more stringent.
Yes.
I don't quote me on this. I mean, it's more like roughly 4.9 on the old cycle. And the vision always was, I always wanted to get to 6 miles per kilowatt hour. Lucid Air's too big a car to do that, but a small car like a Volkswagen Golf, that is the vision. That's what I've set the team. Could we, by the middle of the decade, get to 6 miles per kilowatt hour? To do that, we'd have to prove 4 miles per kilowatt hour with Lucid Air. And we're getting awfully close now. It seemed like crazy, but we are getting close.
Right.
And remember, there's a lot of weight in air for the sound pack and the features, even in pure. that we could take out, but we want to keep it a luxury experience.
Right.
But, and just for people listening,
the tech could be separated from the brand.
If you didn't know, Lucid with the Air is the efficiency leader by a fairly considerable margin, right? Like I was driving, I think you mentioned your Rivian. I was in an ID4 all of last year. I think that maybe the best I've seen on average is 2.4, 2.6 or 2.7.
You'd be doing well at that.
Yeah, Model 3 can do a little bit better than that.
Model 3 is pretty good.
Yeah. So, and this goes back to conversation. I took a tour of your facilities, and you told me, the future, you wouldn't need such a large battery pack if you have this efficiency.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you can bring it down.
Yeah, exactly.
And lighten it.
Totally.
And that's how you get there.
Totally. And then you get into this benevolent circle. It makes it lighter, so you get more. So part of this 4.74 that we get with the Pure, I don't overstate it, it's not all our technology. Because we've got a smaller battery pack, it's taking weight out, which makes it a little bit more efficient. Right. So it's just laws of physics.
So let me ask you, just in terms of the timeline. So you joined 2014. You ran into Johnny around 2019 with a rough mule. That's insane. That's a very fast process. Where at that point had you already started on gravity?
No, we actually started doing air properly in late 15. It was only right at the end of 15, and we did it air in about 1 year, and we got a prototype, a show car, but it was a running vehicle. And we launched that with the new name Lucid. And I got terrible misgivings about Lucid because I thought, oh my God, what have I done? We call us Lucid. Are they going to think we're smoking something in California?
It's perfect.
And then people said, I said, what? I only get this sort of remorse. I've gone too far. I've called it Lucid. And I didn't even consult the board because they would have said no. So I said, we're just going to do it. It's like they found out afterwards. And then people said, we like Lucid, we like the name. I said, are you sure? Are you sure? I was like, oh, all right, it's memorable. So between late 15 and late 16, we got to a drivable prototype of Air, and we got a few prototypes running. And one of those we built into a speed car, and we proved that it could do 235 miles an hour. That was with our old tech. It was 400 volts at that stage.
Right.
Then we thought we'd go to market and get some money because we needed to industrialize it. So we got the 200 million before. We needed more money to industrialize.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
200 million will do
a nice prototype.
That's like the doors on a modern car, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the 17 and 18 were lean years where we just didn't get any investment. No one was interested in talking to us. It was a disaster. And that's when we nearly went bankrupt multiple times. And every Friday morning, I'd speak to the company, and there'd be less people in front of me. And I wasn't even CEO, but I was put in charge. I was the leader of the company, but I didn't have the title, which is a crazy situation as well. Sure. That's another story. So when I was made CEO, someone said, well, it's a big step up for you. And I said, well, that's a piece of cake. I said, you should try to do it without the title. Right. So we were down to about 120 people. And a miracle happened. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia came and rescued us. And I'll never forget. They put faith in us when no one else did. And it's been a fantastic. And they've supported us so fully from that day. And they saved us, I'll tell you.
And you have a factory there.
We have a factory, the first car factory in Saudi Arabia. I'm so proud, and it's a matter of national pride there. And let me tell you, there are young women working alongside their male counterparts on the line.
Oh, that's great.
They're treated absolutely equal, and it's absolutely wonderful to see this. There's a generation with a will to work, to prove themselves, and there's a young Saudi generation coming and working in our factory. I mean so much, because I think there's a great social change for the better there. We're part of that. We're part of that movement.
And then, so when did, now that things have you got the investment, things are looking up.
Well, what happened was we got the potential investment fall of 18.
Okay.
But then we had to go through a government approval process. But of course, there were the two longest shutdowns in a US government history. So we didn't really get the money till spring of 19. So it was only go early 19. And so we went from early 19 go, and we re-engineered everything. We said, right, We're going to go from IGBT's inverter system to silicon carbide. We're going to go from 420 volts to 925. We got ultra high voltage. We reworked the whole architecture of the battery because we'd learned so much from Formula E racing by then. We were already supplying to Formula E.
Right. And no one knows that.
We created, so we'd been in Formula E for many years by then.
Right.
And all that learning from, I mean, I'll give you an example, reducing the electrical resistance inside the battery pack is key. So what we learned in Formula E was rather than have just one wire bond to the positive of each cell and one to the negative, each of those are hotspots, and you only need one fuse per cell. So we put 2 wire bonds to the positive, 1 to the negative. So we halved half of the resistance. And then so it's 3 wire bonds to each cell in Formula E. It reduced the resistance of the pack, reduced the heat through the race. We still preconditioned it cold for the race and let the pack heat up at the end of the race. And we tuned that with the wire bond thickness. And then when we came to apply this to air, we went thick and thin on the wire bond, which no one had done. And so we dramatically reduced the heating in the pack. That means more efficiency, more range, and because there's less heating, we need smaller radiators, so we become more aerodynamic.
And possibly fewer thermal runaway?
Hopefully. Okay. Yes, hopefully.
I wanted to get back to something you said, though, where you said, hey, battery team, you're going to sit with the transmission team, or motor team, you're going to sit with the transmission team.
Yeah, single team.
I noticed you do a lot of that at Lucid.
Yes, a lot of it.
Whereas like the design and the engineers have to look at each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's very unusual.
It is.
Because usually it's fighting.
It
and
is.
It seems so did you push that through?
It's always been
or
my
where'd
thing.
you get that?
So it's been really difficult for me to become a complete vehicle engineer in the industry. I was at Jaguar Cars for many years, and I rose to be responsible for all body structure design at Jaguar. But I wanted to be a complete vehicle engineer. I had to change jobs and take pay cuts to work at other places, and that led to me becoming chief engineer of advanced engineering at Lotus, and that's why I was able to take the role of chief engineer on Model S, because I was a pretty capable chief engineer at that stage, particularly from my Lotus experience. And that is rare. Most people know individual systems. The industry is very siloed.
Right.
And the other thing is, I chose Derek. I spoke to a number of designers until actually Joanne Jung, who heads our interior design, she said, I've worked with Derek. You need to meet Derek. I'd never met him. She set up a dinner with Derek and me in Los Angeles. We met sort of subversively for dinner one evening, and I convinced him we're going to do a crazy project called this new car. We didn't have a name for it. And I said, it's going to be a bigger interior. It's going to have this space concept, and it's not going to have this long hood and the screen back. It's going to break all the rules. And Derek was, I'm not sure. But in Derek, I saw someone who was very respectful of engineering. He genuinely respects engineers.
Right.
And very wanting to work collaboratively. And this is why there's been this harmony. There's this, I set it all up with the advanced engineering is in the studio. This is unheard of.
Right.
But there's
in the design studio.
But yes, exactly. Yeah. But it only works because the designers want to work with the engineer.
Right.
Normally you get a clay model and it's a fight of fantasy, and then the engineers can't make the damn thing work, and it's all the engineer's fault. But hang on, is it the studio's fault because they created something you couldn't ever make?
Yeah.
So I see it as like a game of tennis. Engineers have a serve game, then the design team, and we go back and forth. And a great example is the actual overhang on the rear of Gravity was very much determined by how we get those seats, the third row to fold, how compact can we make it, every last millimetre, right, that's the design. And I'll give you another example. We've got Jean-Charles Monnet, who was a lead aerodynamicist at Red Bull Formula One team, who worked with Adrian Newey for 4 years, where in the Vettel years. He's led all the aerodynamics, good years, 4 years.
Yeah.
Pretty good years now, right now, as well as Verstappen. But John Charles has led the aerodynamics all through air. We've got the CD down to 0.197 on air now.
Oh, is it? So it's
lower? It's under It's under 0.2.
Wow.
And actually,
that's just so everyone listening. That's a very low number. That's never been achieved.
And it's got a very small frontal area as well. So the CDA is 11% better than the next best car that I won't mention. But
It's Mercedes EQS. But go ahead.
Anyway, so another factor in gravity is with the rear seats folding down and determine the length of the overhang, the diffuser, that has a pretty big effect upon, in Formula One, it's a downforce thing. In a road car, it's a range, and it affects the coefficient of drag. So how far up we pull the diffuser. Now, you can't pull it too far because you get a flow breakaway, you get flow separation, and you get the opposite of what you want. Very gentle flow. And of course, what is unique about our car is, and it's one of my inventions, is that the curved battery pack of Lucid Air has been carried over. So the whole car is a wing car. The underfloor diffuser starts at the battery pack. We haven't got a flat battery pack and then a diffuser. The diffuser starts around the B pillar, and the whole battery pack is gently curved.
And see,
we carry that to gravity.
That goes back to more of what I was talking about, where you always hear, "Yeah, we could stick the batteries in the body panels. We could, but no one ever does it." So it's interesting. Instead of just square bricks or rectangular bricks, you're actually curving them.
You could. I mean, the extreme sort of quasi-invention I had was that, you know how Formula 1 cars got 2 layers of carbon and there's a Nomex honeycomb between? Mm-hmm. Instead of a Nomex honeycomb, you could have a cell honeycomb.
Right.
And you could build a carbon monocoque, which is a sandwich of carbon. Instead of the Nomex honeycomb, you could the batteries and then carbon.
I've heard this talked about.
But it's a bad idea because it's just it's stunning.
Sounds complicated. We're running out of time here. Okay. When did gravity become conceived? When did you say we have to do an SUV?
We knew we had to do an SUV many years ago.
I mean, the first time I was up at your factory, it was or headquarters. It was hey, we're doing an SUV too.
Yeah. So when did we launch? We launched October 21. The first deliveries,
something like that.
Around then. Uh-huh. So it's been 2 years now. Gravity's over 2 years. We've been seriously doing Gravity for about 2 years, 9 months. So Gravity was well in the works before we even launched it. If you really know what you're doing, you can do a car from conception to start of production in 3.5 years. That's pretty much world record pace. That's really pushing. Maybe you could do it a bit quicker. If things go awry, it takes a little. It's about 42 months.
The market has changed quite a bit in the last 42 months. Like we passed in the last 18 months, the U.S. reached the 5% sales, that key gateway where 5% of all new vehicle sales are EVs, and it's gone to closer to 8%. But then now everyone's freaking out because it seems to have, it's the rate of growth that has slowed a little bit. Would you, knowing what you know now, would you have changed anything about the conception of this vehicle? No.
I have an unerring faith that EVs are the future.
It's inevitable.
It is inevitable. I think that macro is having an effect upon all luxury car sales.
Yeah,
and I think it comes back to the efficiency thing. All roads lead to efficiency because EVs today are a little bit more expensive than their gasoline counterparts. And in this really stressful interest rate economy,
inflation
that's impacting. And inflation, it's crushing them up.
Yeah.
And if you look at the number of cars we've sold this year, it kills me that we've got the best car on the planet and the numbers should be higher.
Right.
But we're not too shabby compared with Porsche Taycan sales. And that's the mighty Porsche. And most people never heard of Lucid. So I can beat myself up too much here.
I was just standing, looking before we started recording, and there's this couple standing there, and that lady goes, "Who makes this?"
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a Lucid." I've never heard of
Lucid.
Lucid.
Say it's Lucid, but who makes it?
Yeah. And I was just like, you're at the car show on Media Day, and you've never heard of Lucid. I don't know who they were, but yeah. So that's not too shabby.
Let me change gears here just quickly because I'm dying to ask you this question because it's been in the news. NACS.
Yeah.
Whole industry pivoted after Farley announced that Ford is going. You guys are now doing it. What was your role in the creation of Tesla's before they called it NACS, the charge handle, the whole infrastructure? How involved were you in that?
So when I led the engineering of Model S, I conceived a charge port in front of the driver's door. Okay. And I explained to my then boss the logic behind it. I said, look, it should be driver's side. Most Americans drive nose in. I've learnt that being this side of the pond. And we want to minimize cable length. So you need to put it on the driver's side, somewhere at the front of the vehicle. But statistically, the most vulnerable parts of the car, the corners for damage in the nose. So you don't want to have a charge port in that high damageability area statistically, because you have a fender bender and you can't charge your EV. Right. So I said, therefore, I'm just a logical guy. So I can see the space just behind the rear, just behind the front wheel, in front of the driver's door. And the rationale I was given was, well, if I do that, I'll trip over the cable on the way out of my garage. So where do you want it then? Oh, I want it at the rear of the car. Then I won't trip. So that's how the rear corner of Model S as a charge port location was determined. So then it was, the rush was on. How are we going to do this charge port and how are we going to conceive it? So Franz von Holzhausen came up with this, well, we can hide it behind the light. And then I designed a different flap, which he hated. And he said, well, I'll stick to design, you stick to engineering, Peter. So therefore, we then conceived this little thing that did this with the magnets. And my team did that. And then we wanted to get a really, and to give Elon his due, he did want to actually miniaturize the connector. He said, look, I remember he said, look, the cables are only that thick, so why are the connectors any thicker? We don't want a clunky thing. And he was driving. So I didn't personally design the NACS port, but my team did.
Okay.
And we managed, and it was very much driven by how compact could we make it, how elegant could we make it, and could it be fitting in that little bit, that pointy bit of the Model S taillight.
Could you
sorry.
on the that's the direction of the mic.
Yeah.
So why? So you're switching to? Why are you switching now? Why didn't you just launch with it? Because you obviously knew the technology.
Well, you believe the technology is superior to current CCS one?
Look, I believe that the NACS technology is more reliable, and reliability trumps technology. If you look at the CCS system today, when it works, you can go 1,000 volts, 350 kilowatts or more. On the way down here, I was in a Sapphire. It was charging at 323 kilowatts. Perfectly well.
Wow.
So the future.
That's blazing.
So if you look at NACS, most of those units, the V3s, they're not ultra high voltage.
Yeah.
And the future is ultra high voltage.
They're 220-ish right now?
They're 4 to 500 volts.
Oh. Okay. No, okay.
Yeah, the output voltage.
Yes.
Yeah, voltage. Yeah. But the watts, they charge at like 220.
So let me tell you why.
Kilos.
So let me tell you why this is important. Because power is volts times amps. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. You multiply volts by amps. So if you got 1,000 volts, 350 amps, you got 350,000 watts, which is 350 kilowatts. So if you got a lower voltage system, say half the voltage, you got to double the amps. But the heat of the system is amps squared. So if you half the voltage, it's the system has got 4 times the heat. And if you compare our 924 volts with a 400 volt, the heat is 5 times. So it's 5 times in the cable. And that's why, if you look at the NACS, you become current limited because if you got 1,000 volts, you're not effectively current voltage limited. I think that the NACS is a more reliable system, and I think here is an example of reliability of infrastructure trumps the hypothetical technological advantage of CCS. Now, NACS is a more elegant thing, and I'll tell you why it's more elegant, because it has a dual function for the plus and minus. It does 2 things. It's not like the J1772 with the DC as a separate thing and the CCS combo. You get dual functionality in NACS that the plus and the minus can do AC and DC. It's the same connector. Right. And that's what makes it so shrunk down and so elegant. But I mean, we don't complain about the elegance of our gasoline filler handle, do we? I mean, you don't really see that in the car. So
yeah.
I think I'm not sure if that's a marginal advantage. It's cool.
But what about the version 4 of
now that's great, and that's what we want.
Okay.
And that is the 1,000 volts, and that is fantastic.
And
if we could
that exists?
Yes, but in tiny numbers, I believe.
Yeah.
And what we want to see is a widespread rollout of the 1,000 volts next, and we keep everybody happy. Because let me tell you, ultra high voltage is the future.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah.
We just got the high sign. You have one question you can ask.
I do.
I will ask one question first. I will ask one question first.
Okay.
When can we drive it? And when can
Soon, we'll be the first.
We'll be the first?
Johnny and I were the first to drive up Angeles Crest Highway.
Yeah.
We had a blast in Dream Editions.
Yeah.
Let's do it again. Okay, Johnny, your question.
We should do it.
I was going to say, let's just do it again.
Yes, we should do it again.
They just reopened up Angeles Crest.
Time you had a Sapphire then.
And yes, that's very true, but let's do it in Gravity.
Let's go in Sapphires and Gravities.
Okay, fine. We'll do both.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have a nice fine drive together.
Yes.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you. Your team is about to drag you out of here.
Okay.
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
the time.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah.
And it's been an honour to be invited to this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The pleasure and the honor is ours.
Okay.